Hello, my demons and ghoulies. Welcome back to my channel. And today, in the year 2025, at least that's when I'm recording this. We'll see when the actual video comes out. I'm trying to do better by myself, for myself. And to do that, I need to be a little indulgent, as we've seen in the previous video of talking about my OC's world. And to do that, again, we're going to be talking about my OCs, but more of the entire world that they are contained in. Hex, the underworld, all the realms, or the rings of hell, as I guess we should say. But, like, does that sound fun? Because it better. Because you're strapped in and watching, and I'm not letting go until I talk your ear off. This is also just a great way for me to get all my ideas sort of down and out there, and to help a few friends who want to make a demon OC help, I guess, get the context that they deserve in order to make that a real thing. So let's go. So first and foremost, I do want to mention that I am not the only creator of this world. Awarl, or Awa, as I affectionately call them, links below, go watch their streams. They are a Twitch streamer. Has had a hand in this since basically we first met in like 2012, I think. Holy shit, time flies. We had initially made OCs in a very loosely tangible story, and more often than not, it was really just to roleplay for funsy onesies. Eventually, all those OCs lived in a house, and it was a place where they all lived in an attempt to have them all in one place just for convenience sake. Eventually, because we got more OCs, it upgraded to a proverbial mansion, and then even a town for a brief time, simply because there was more of them. They all had certain jobs and aspects, and we wanted to appropriately allocate a space for them, I guess. At this point, we're getting to the pandemic times, and we were both adults and have our brains fully formed. And we were like, what are we doing? Why would not like go from a town and just create a whole world? So that is how Hell and the Underworld was born. A lot of the OCs during that time sort of got put on the back burner, or they got retired, I guess is a good way to put it. But so, because the Underworld was made, we ended up focusing more on demons and monsters and that sort of aspect. And truth be told, it's been a blast, creating a whole world full of lore, rules, characters, and so much more together, all while picking away at our own corners separately, to have like our own little niche, I guess. While I can't really recall why it was specifically about Hell and Demon and the shenanigans they pursue, I will say it is different from like the Vivzy Pop version of Hell, because I know that is kind of a common theme with media these days, especially I guess also with recently the Gaslight District, by the way, love very much. But like Vivzy's, we do have angels, although it's not really super touched upon. But it's also just different. I kind of wanted to just toss that out there, because it's not like we're not copying them, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's our own thing. And I also feel like it's Hell. Everyone has their own version, so like, it's whatever. So before I do get into the nitty-gritty of it all, I want to break it down into chunks so it should be easier to understand, I hope. And if I have enough wherewithal, I'd like to also put some chapters down below in like the video timeline. So if there's something specific you're looking for, you can find that. We're gonna go by characters, mostly the main big players, and then some like more side characters. Settings, places of the world, and some fundamentals on how things work, and then work our way toward the story and timeline so far at the end. Take note that obviously we don't have a reasoning for everything, and of course we're missing details. But that's kind of the fun about making a world. There's always going to be those little details to fill in along the way, and also people get to also, if they want, give some input and be like, oh, what about if this thing was in there? It's like, okay. Deal. I think it's also important to mention that things are also about to change. It's not like, this is going to be a concrete game, book, story, whatever. So things can always just change. Nothing has to be concrete or written in stone. I do think a lot of it is pretty solid, but there's always a chance that this info would change down the road. But for now, I'm tired of this just being in my head, and I want to get this out there. So let's get started. First off, the quote-unquote protagoni, main characters, whatever you want to call them, is Heximus, Hex, High, and Awa for short. These two characters were originally meant to be self-inserts for this world, but over time they've developed their own personalities and eventually their own stories. So, as much as I love to say that, like, Hex is my persona, she's also kind of her own creature at this point. But starting off with yours truly, Hex is a shape-shifting pact-maker demon by proxy, more on that later, working for Beltors as his sole underling. She's been doing a lot of odd jobs for her master at all hours, summoning the sharpest knives for the job. She's a little too loyal to Beltors at first, but to her friends as well. She's got a hard time expressing her feelings at times, so she'd rather use her actions. She's around 300 years old, and she only has vague memories of her past that sort of keep cropping up the more she interacts with her friends and the story progresses. Unbeknownst to her, she was raised in France by abusive parents, and when Beltors came to make a deal with her, she said yes, and then went on to end not only her parents' lives, but her own, as well as her betrothed. She didn't want to be betrothed anyway, so it's fine. Part of her punishment is that due to her emotional turmoil while alive, any extreme emotions cause her shape-shifting abilities to go haywire and she loses control of herself. She and Phoenix, who we'll meet later on, used to some degree, have a complicated relationship, but fate is currently drifting Hex towards Angus Beefcake. Read him later. Regardless, she's always got Jace by her side. They're besties. Ride or die. Next up is Awa. And from here on out, any characters that were created by Awa, I'm going to have in a teal text. Any characters that were made by me are going to be in a deeper blue text. Just so that there is credit where credit is due and there is like some sort of differential for people. Awa is a small, fun-sized gecko demon. They mostly look like a kobold, but when they formed in hell, the human side of Awa fused with the soul of a gecko, making them a little gecko-looking demon. Technically, I think an imp, but it's sort of all under the same umbrella. Right now, Awa is the apprentice of Belphegor, and the next in line to become Sloth. A special fact about Awa is that they are constantly producing mana and magic and have to take time to calm themselves down and discharge the extra bits. If they get too excited, angry, or scared, etc., their mana discharges in a large burst like an explosion. Awa can also shapeshift, but tends to stick more to animal and monstrous forms rather than a full humanoid shape. They are on their pilgrimage currently before they become the next Lord of Sloth and are stuck within the confines of their castle for the next few thousand years. Next up is Selma, a charming and welcoming succubi, as well as a performer and owner of the Heartstrings Tavern. Selma is able to charm those around her even if she doesn't realize it. She's witty and generous and adores to be with others. She's the mom friend of the group. Make her mad and she'll crack a floral and thorny whip your way. I think I had placed her somewhere in her, 40s is when she died-ish, and she's around 200 to 400 years old, give or take, with a British and Spanish descent, if I remember correctly. So she has a tiny bit of a British accent, just a little bit. As a human, she was a prostitute when a man decided he wanted a private show and to buy her as his. When she declined, he outright killed her. Before descending to hell, Selma came back as a vengeful spirit, tore the man's heart out of him, and let him rot. Slay Queen. Her punishment is never be able to have children of her own or to ever be called a mother or to ever marry, despite how she so badly wanted a family of her own, especially with a certain Viking man that we will meet later. Also a friend of Selma is Jace. They are an incubus who struggles with addiction. From their mortal life to now, they've never seemed to have the ability to move away from the drugs so encapsulating to them and their life. Preferring a more feminine form, the demon is always working or hanging out with the Lord of Pain and Torture, Asaroth, who we will also meet later. The two started a thing a few decades ago and haven't made anything crazy official, but everyone can see how deeply in love they are. It's very cute. Jace prides himself in being Hex's favorite bitch and leaks all the juicy gossip that they can. With him and Astaroth's open relationship, he's free to work his job as a pleasure demon. But they do report any activities to the Lord as sort of a trust exercise. We love a healthy relationship. Recently, the two have seemed closer than ever, and as Jace slips in and out of waves of addiction, worry from Astaroth is apparent. Ornias is probably the youngest of our group. I think he's only around 100 years old, give or take, and is always seen wearing a pair of gloves. He's a meme lord and all-around general goofball, despite him being one of Hell's actual torturers. He only tortures Aquarii and seems to know their greatest fear after only minutes after meeting them. On his off hours, though, aside from trolling and lying and being a bit of a dick, he uses some of his talents to grow and create tinctures and salves to help heal and ease soreness of wounds old and new. As a human, he and his best friend were both in love with the same girl, and while at first it was civil, it soon became aggressive. Man, am I right? His friend ended up getting aggressive with not only Ornias, but the girl herself, and in defense, Ornias took action. He ended up beating him to death with his bare fists, and in his rage turned on the girl and ended her, where he was then incarcerated. He's not a fan of small spaces much anymore. His punishment consists of hurting others again as a torturer, but also the chronic illness of his hands being covered in massive scars, always hurting and the nerves in them rather frayed. Thane and him have a rather father and son bond, and a very strong one at that. We'll meet Thane, and it'll make a little bit more sense later, but Thane kind of took him under his wing, and he sort of adopted him as his son. Next is Spike, who I think is also one of the youngest members. He definitely acts like it a bit more sometimes. I feel like with him and Ornias around, they definitely show a bit of their younger selves and more goofy, just goofball selves. Spike is a shadow demon, meaning he has been born in hell and he has the ability to jump from shadow to shadow, no matter how far the distance between them, as long as he's been able to be there before. It's a lot harder to jump to somewhere you haven't been, but it is possible if you're navigating the proverbial shadow web. Seeing as he's a bit of a drug dealer, it's quite convenient for him. Since he's born of shadows, though, it means being out in the light for long periods of time is a hard no. Despite being Ornias' best friend, he's a bit more mellow and down to earth, but still a good goofball, and well-mannered for the most part. Since he's got a bit of free time on his hands, he's also the drummer in a band called Hell's Reign, in some alt-punk kind of band with Tali, who we'll meet later. Obviously, though, I would like to imagine that their shows are a bit dimly lit, or there's minimal lights and then some pyrotechnics, so that Spike can at least hang out for as long as he can. And Thane, as previously mentioned, our big, strong Viking. He is, if Selma is the mom of the group, Thane is the dad. And he definitely has a crush on Selma. Thane's probably one of the older, if not, I don't want to say oldest, but definitely one of the olders. And he is one of Hell's top generals in the army and personally oversees training new members and keeping everyone in tip-top shape. He seems pretty intimidating, mostly due to the grizzled old man look, but he's a dad at heart. He used to have a family as a human, a loving wife, and 2 beautiful daughters, but when an ambush attack from a rival clan in the middle of the night destroyed everything, he made sure he would get his vengeance, even if it meant his life. He remembers his family and his past fondly, but tries not to let it get to him too much. The past is the past, and he set his sights on a new family with Selma, who he adores, and Ornias, his proverbial adopted son, who he never had, and secretly cherishes them with all of his heart. His punishment is to use his battle prowess to train others, ensuring that he'll have to watch them all suffer if war is to ever come, and that he too will lose himself in the thralls of battle. The claymore he wields is from his human days and a testament to that. I also imagine he's got a berserker ability where it's just don't give a fuck, going ham, absolute battle rage, blind with fury, which is great because it can take down a lot of enemies, but it also means you could be attacking your allies as well. So pros and cons. Speaking of big baddies, we have Angus Beefcake, the bull. He is one of the Abyss's children, which we will get to later, and guards the Fountain of the Abyss, a large pool of universe found in the bowels of the pits where long ago a bit of the void seeped into the domain that is hell. A large minotaur-like being, most see the compassionate demon as a big ol' softy, but in reality he is a cruel and unforgiving torturer. He keeps his demonic form in all ways that he can, but he must return to the fountain once every 48 hours to hold that form. Most find it strange that the quote-unquote demon is regularly found lounging in the pool, but he simply waves it off, deflecting the questions and saying it makes his skin feel nice, which it does, and honestly, I can't blame him. If it would make my skin feel good, I would too. He stays mostly to the pits unless coming up to Selma's Tavern a few times a week to enjoy his days off, or to get a good look at the demon he loves, but knows he can never have. So now we have Phoenix, the Hell Prince and Lord of Arts and Literature. His days are found to be largely the same, recording all history in written word within the Golden Library that he protects. He has a few chosen disciples within the library to help him record volumes and ensure that the domain is protected. Consumed by his duty of punishment in hell, he's rarely found outside of his domain, poor guy. He has his normal form, then a large purple and black monstrous phoenix form that he uses very rarely. This form is used mainly for protection of the library and his own well-being. When he's in his normal form, he normally gets fucked at Selma's, drowning out his thoughts and simply wanting to hear noise. Though he won't admit it, he loves someone, but with his duty and his problems with the past, he's afraid to act on those feelings. Though when very drunk, he lets it slip and simply wants to be around her. He has one son, Stolas, who, while he doesn't talk to, he has a stringent relationship with. He has too much to worry about a grown man. Very fair. Also, going on to another parent, we have Belial. Belial is the demon of lies, and that's exactly what he specializes in. Mostly. He's one of the newer lords, of which we'll get into later, and works in an office building in Greed, a typical 9 to 5, ironically. Did you ever think that there would be a 9 to 5 in hell? It is presumed that one day he is going to take over for Mammon? Tomato? He makes sure everyone's punishments are recorded and carried out accordingly. As boring and mundane as his job is, it's important and stable, and that's enough for him. Apparently though, seeing as he's old, in his younger years he used to be a bit of a rebel. Must be where his daughter Tally gets it from. Too bad they aren't on good terms. I'd like to think that with being able to see lies, he has a good time obviously telling how to lie, but also has an easy time just from the way you say something knowing if it's actually a lie or not. Now our big heavy hitters are basically concluded. And now we're going to move on to more secondary characters. These are characters who don't pop up in stories as often or in the timeline, but they do pop up and they're just not fully fleshed out, and maybe one day they will, maybe not. It is important to have secondary characters, but my brain also really wants them all to have like their own in-depth story, so maybe one day. First up is Lilima. Lilima is my newest OC for this world, and I can't decide if I want to make her a baby, like younger than Ornias or older than Ornias. I think I want her to be baby. I'm not sure. We'll see. Regardless, she's been slowly working her way into the Jason Hex friendship circle, hell yes. She's a sarcastic type. She has a quick wit, but knows the right time to use it, and loves dark academia style, but with a bit more pastel goth color palette. It's a little unique, but it's a vibe. I like it. She works in a dusty old shop full of dusty old antiques, appraising and cataloging them for later sales. She loves her job, even if it seems boring to others, and will absolutely talk your ear off if you give her an inch. We love it. I don't know her punishment yet, but since she is trans, I'm not sure if I want it to be that her past life is permanently forgotten by her, along with some other crime or sin of her human life, but nothing is set in stone. Because she's trans, I want to be sort of delicate with that. I don't want it to be some sort of commodity for her character or have it tied too partially into her punishment. I'm not sure. If you're trans and you have you know, something that could help me with this, or you want to like sound off and give your experience of what you think would be a good idea or not, let me know. I'm genuinely curious. I would love to hear it. Next is the twins, Blaze and Trinity. These two cutie patooties are both succubi, and while they say they're twins, in actuality they're not, but they were super close as humans and still considered themselves as much when they were alive. As humans, they were sex workers, and part of their persona was that they were a twin deal. One came with the other. They could not be separated. They were looking to leave behind sex work for something else, but their boss wouldn't let them go, and with nowhere to turn and nowhere else to go, they both downed a bottle of pills and went out together hand in hand. Now in hell, they're stuck being succubi, but work part-time at Selma's Tavern. Mostly Blaze at the bar, being a bartender, and Trinity as a server. I feel like while part of their punishment is being succubi, calling back to their work as a human, I think that they would also suffer whenever they're apart. Like maybe their tolerance to things is lowered when apart, or something along those lines. Having them be stuck together and truly be sort of a unit, I think would be sort of a fitting punishment. Either that, I suppose, or a fitting punishment was that they could never be together anymore. But I'd like to think that them being together meant that they would have a harder time growing as individuals. That's my sort of thought process on that. Next up is Tali. Tali is a rock and roll rebel fire child and to a stuffy old coon. Her words, not mine. She feels like Belial, her father, is suppressing her, doesn't understand her. Honestly, all the typical teenage stuff, except she's older than a teenager. Secretly, she does want his affection, but she's not sure how to do it through any means other than music. And secretly, he kind of wants the same, just maybe not through music. She does inherit his ability to detect lies, though. The two of them come up with ways of talking in half-truths, so it gets really muddy to tell whether it is actually a truth or not. She lives her band and her life without her father, but does yearn for something more. Since she's born in hell, I can't tell what kind of punishment she would have. But she is a lesbian, she loves the ladies, she wants more out of life, and she just wants that freedom that I think a lot of people would crave. Asvaya doesn't have a lot of lore, truth be told. She was an apprentice under Thane at one point, but is now a lethal warrior of her own right. She absolutely despises men and is in charge of punishing abusive and misogynistic men. Slay. She loves her job, and she loves solitude for the most part. She's rather mysterious and would rather keep it that way. I do think she is also a lesbian, if I remember correctly, and I think, honestly, swear to Lucifer, the only man I can think of that she would at least respect is Thane, because that is her mentor and teacher. I think she would have a very deep understanding and appreciation and respect for him, but I really do think she just hates men. I'm assuming it would have to do with her past as a human, but I don't know. Asaroth, we've mentioned before, is the Lord of Pain and Torture. While not a Prince of Hell, he is easily very important, seeing over a great many demons down in the maze-like pits that take in souls and punish demons, ensuring the souls are properly tormented before being allowed to roam in hell freely as a denizen. Known as a denizen of lust, they pretty regularly have a small paramour of succubi and incubi, his favorite being a rather inconsequential demon named Jace, who we've met. Some even say they see the fearsome demon smile when the incubus is around, but those rumors are quickly silenced. He takes great pride in his work, and is one of the more powerful lords in hell. Sadan, who we actually don't see too much, is an Oni who works in the Ring of Lust. His punishment is to hand weave a kimono once a week. Even with his talents, it's still a very difficult task to ensure that it's done. I don't blame him. Especially since parties, sex, and art consume his life. He's had multiple trips to the pits, but simply comes back and reinserts himself into everyone's business. Owning his own shop, he's known as one of the best kimono makers in hell, and weaves ancient magic into the fabrics to bring the pieces to life. He seems to know exactly what fabrics belong to each customer, and it's an old technique of soul reading that the Oni relies on heavily to keep his customers coming back and to fuel his extravagant lifestyle. And last but not least, we have Selitz, Awa's brother and half of the same soul. Once imp and now demon, he has worked his way into his position. While Awa is small and packed with magic, Selitz is tall and proud, kind of the opposite. His overconfident behavior and composure covers up his nearly non-existent skill with magic, mostly focusing on potions, herbal remedies, and crystal works. The two do not know they are halves of the same soul and have never met. Influential in his own circles, the demon has no real power and simply sticks around those of power, offering what he can to be of use. Now I'm going to go on to still characters, but they are worth mentioning, but currently don't play a particularly large role. It is, and we're going to get into like what this means later on, but we are going to discuss the 7 deadly sins, the 7 lords. And we'll talk about lords later, but we have the lords, and then we have another section afterwards that is also a little farther removed, but it'll make sense with a little more context later on, so just sit tight. So first, we have Belfgor, as we've mentioned, the ruler of the Ring of Sloth. Moves slowly and is also sleepy all the time. Thinks the way that he runs things is best, and is master to Awa. I like to imagine that they have a caterpillar body and massive chains hanging off of them just to literally keep them from being slow. Next is Satan, ruler of the Ring of Wrath. She's a firm and blunt woman who enjoys the arena. Her ring tends to be a more strongest survives situation. It's a little hot and scary down there. Beelzebub, ruler of the Ring of Gluttony, a starving man who constantly eats, shoving food into all of his mouths. Honestly, one of the best cooks out there. Leviathan, ruler of the Ring of Envy, an almost ocean and cave-like ring that embodies his existence. He has full ownership of Asmodeus and extorts that control often. Asmodeus, ruler of the Ring of Lust, an aloof and deeply thoughtful demon who seems too deep in his thoughts. Their ring is one of passion, covered in art, sex, and drugs. Mammon, ruler of the Ring of Greed. Short, bubbly, and covered in coins. She'll give you some coin in exchange for something no one else in the world has. Something only you have. Which I would like to think is something as simple as maybe your voice, or literally the shirt off your back. Lucifer, the king of hell, originally an angel and now the ruler of hell. He is found within his castle. It is either once a century revelation or a very rare condition that he is found outside of his castle. One can petition to see the Flayed King, but many do not leave with what they wanted. Very mysterious indeed, and unfortunately, Lilith, who I do want incorporated in the story, is MIA, as in we don't have any design or thoughts about her, so it's a work in progress. It's happening, I promise. Next is this is the last category of characters. This is the eldritch, otherworldly sort of characters that don't quite fit into any other category, but they are worth mentioning just because there are tidbits of them that pop up in the deep, 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 deep lore. First is Beltors, who we have mentioned. He is one of the few known pact makers in hell and is rarely seen. He sends all of his orders and some of his powers to Hex, making sure she's bringing in the souls he requires, demon and human alike. Rumor has it he is the one who made a deal with Lucifer and caused Lucifer to fall and make hell in the first place. He always wears a mask and his ambitions are unknown. He's also said to be as old as time itself. He can come off as charismatic and charming, but can easily flip to being cold and sharp in a second. Next is Samuel, and I did include him just because there are eldritch themes. There is like another realm. I figure it might be tied in somehow, so even though I mentioned him entirely in another video, it's worth a good checkup in case you haven't watched it. Samuel is an eldritch being from another realm and sort of adjacent to a pact maker, sort of. He's not really in this world, but since he hops dimensions, I wanted to include him. Long story short, he's obsessed with humans and acts very similarly to Slenderman, except actually a threat who doesn't care about whatever gets destroyed on his way to completing his goals. Sleep paralysis motherfucker vibes. Next is Deceit, a mouth of being and eyes. He's got his grubby eyes in every shadow in hell and sort of works as an emissary between the abyss and hell. Only popping up every so often, but somehow the most informed being in all the worlds. One can find him and bring him specific offerings to ask a simple question over tea, where he'll speak of everything, true and false, that he knows about your question. The Abyss, who has been mentioned a lot, a being of unknown origin who is constantly trying to spread its influence and consume the planes back into the void where life first started. It watches the gate to the dream plane, where its children watch each gate into the celestial plane the Hawk guards, the hell plane, which Angus guards, and the mortal plane, which Decay guards. And speaking of decay, that's who's next. Decay is a being and god of decay, actually, and rebirth. Being terribly old and on the mortal plane, very few know of him. He's a grotesque, giant, decaying body going through the cycle of rot before collapsing into freshly blooming flowers, and thus the cycle starts anew. He guards the gate with due diligence and is fairly non-biased on most matters. Rhodey is one of his few disciples, and she sticks by him as frequently as she can. The Hawk, also known as Demi. A being who guards the gate to the celestial plane. Not much is known about them, but they are said to hold the regality of an archangel and the beauty of Aphrodite herself. Obviously, the bull, Angus, is someone we've met before, so we can skip that. Or you can go back and listen to his part, I don't know. The Eudex? An entity, a collector. Escaping the void, he runs an underground auction and collection to gather the rarest creatures, souls, and artifacts of each plane. Not much is known about them, but they have dealings and contacts everywhere. If one wants something rare or forbidden, it's likely Eudex that has the artifact or knows where to get it. For a price. And last but not least, Void. Void is an entity who roams the Red Forest. Not much is known about him, but he has been seen eating wandering demons and consuming both flesh and soul until nothing is left. His fur reflects his star-like pattern and his maw opens halfway down his neck, eating his prey nearly whole. Some demons have claimed to befriend the nonverbal creature, but claims are few and far between. The being normally is not seen and is said to be a creature of omen, bringing upon misfortune to all who see it, and those who aren't consumed are allowed to live. The next category is the general umbrella of places. The rings of hell, what they do, transport, all that sort of stuff. Not exactly setting, but enough. So with our characters in place, we have to establish the people and the world they interact with. I think it's best to say that souls play a very important role in hell. While not every demon and creature has their soul does in fact exist somewhere out there. If a demon is to possess their own soul, usually they greatly gain power, as they're basically whole again, mind and body. Souls, I imagine, would also be used as high-ranking currency only in small circles, like seriously higher-up demons or black market kind of stuff. I go back and forth on whether demons as a whole consume souls as a food source, but I don't know. I go back and forth on it. Maybe only some creatures in hell do, not all of them, but it's some food for thought. Starting at the bottom and working our way up, we've got the coitos, typical flora and fauna type stuff. For the hell beasts, there's rumors that they're born from a soul shattering into tiny fragments, each fragment making a creature and holding on to vague emotions from their previous life. More often than not, they're fine as long as you don't get too close. However, the bigger ones are more territorial and will attack on sight. Next is the ghouls. Hello, demons and ghoulies, who are basically just like the dead. They're neither here nor there, holding on to fragmented memories wrapped up in ectoplasm. They're fairly rare and mean no harm, since they only half exist in the space anyways. I guess they're just like a ghost. Getting on to more actual, sentient, tangible beings, we have imps. These beings are more short and chibi in nature and typically have some kind of animalistic feature. They're born with no soul and no remembrance of their human life. Sometimes the human soul gets fragmented and the pieces bind them back together with the soul of an animal, which causes more animal-like features once they form like Awa. More often than not, humans become an imp instead of a demon when they die, but they do have a chance of becoming a demon after a while through either hard work, finding their soul, or something along those lines. Imps are the majority of the labor force in hell, usually assigned jobs upon awakening, and on occasion work for higher lords. It's not uncommon for them to have magic, but having powerful magic of any kind is truly rare. Because of this, there's definitely some consideration going on from demons and higher lords. Imps also lay claim to an entire ring of their own, which we'll get more into later. Next up is demons, but there's a few subcategories to go through, the first being shadow demons, which we have mentioned before very briefly. Shadow demons are born in hell with usually large horns and a darker or more vibrant, rich skin tone, and have control over shadows to various degrees. Like Spike, he's able to jump into a shadow, pop out at any shadow anywhere else as if it were a portal. But for instance, another might be able to fully manipulate shadows, make them grow, so on and so forth. Get imaginative. Since they're so attracted to darkness, it physically is painful for them to be in bright lights or to stay in lights for long periods of time. Like sunburn, but all over and a lot quicker and more owie, I would think. I think it might be funny if they do get burned, like it would show up in like a little white or pale patch instead of getting darker like traditional sunburns. I'm also thinking that since they're born in hell, they have no sins or crimes for when they were human, because they were never human. So in that respect, they probably wouldn't have any kind of punishment, and in fact, maybe the suffering from the light is enough. So next, of course, we have succubi and incubi, which in this realm are pretty close to how they're portrayed in modern day media. Obviously, though, this isn't a choice. Most demons who are a succubi or incubi are that way as a punishment to some degree. They usually have a flirty and seductive attitude to some degree as well, and as also some enhanced attributes. I don't want to say all incubi and succubi are addicted to sex or crave it like an addiction, but I do think some of them have that affliction. I do think part of their punishment can be that they are hypersexual or needing to have sex. The majority of them, predictably, live in Paradisa, the Ring of Lust. So now we have the majority of people in hell, the demons. All of them starting as humans who all have souls and then dying and then take their crimes and sins with them all the way down to hell. They all wake up down in the Ring of Wrath for their punishment. The length and methods, of course, depend on their actions from when they were alive. They serve a majority of their punishment before getting out and serving a new punishment in something akin to a curse. They also all have a sigil, imps included, somewhere on their body that's essentially a name tag, unique to them and to them only. I don't know if it would be something that is always like visible. Like I would almost think it's something that would show up like under a UV light. Like if you flash something certain or cast a spell, you can see their sigil somewhere on them. And I also do think, I'm not sure if I mentioned this later, that placement of your sigil and your sigil type denotes what rank you are, how much magic you have, so it's very intimate. I also like to think that it's your phone number because it's unique to everyone, so just like draw a quick little sigil and call them. Some demons go on to live their lives with their soul from their human life and have more power and all of their human memories, and some just don't. Also, you get to pick a new name in hell, because fuck it, why not? I'd like to think that the less human the look, the more abnormal skin color, horns, etc., the more power that individual has. But if I look at our characters, it's not quite consistent, but there's always a few outliers to that rule in most media, blah, blah, blah. Something to work on, something to think about. Since they are the majority, they've got a wide range of what powers they can have and what they can look like. And I do think it sort of stems from who you were as a human. You could tie into punishment. You could get really, really creative with it. There's a lot of playing room. Minor Lords, our next category, is probably the least worked on, mostly because I'm not sure if I want to keep it or not. So these would be more powerful than your average day demon, enough to command a small legion perhaps, but still nowhere near as powerful as like actual lords, which we'll get into next. Maybe calling them dukes or knights or something can help differentiate them between the two. They're not really special, but they're a bit more powerful than average. I also think I might change it to nobles instead, which is like kind of signifies a higher role or rank or being of more importance, but not necessarily doing much. You know what I mean? So now we could talk about the real lords, new and old. Incredibly powerful and higher ranking. They probably have seen and worked with Lucifer himself at some point. To make the most sense, I'll explain the older lords first, which are the 7 deadly sins. That's it. The old lords are just those 7. They all rule over their own ring of hell and power over a large region. Like, directly, aside from the ring that they govern. They've been living in hell for quite some time and have unique punishments to them, as previously discussed. They all run their respective rings differently and aren't rarely seen by those outside of their immediate staff and close associates. I'd like to imagine that their punishments and ruling a whole ring would keep them busy and more or less confined to their estates in some manner. The new lords, I think, are the same level as old lords in terms of power, maybe a tiny bit under until they actually take over the role as an old lord. These lords are the next in line for the command of the rings and the old lords' respective titles. Whether or not they'll take their 7 deadly sin title or a new one is up for debate. I don't know yet. I was thinking that they may have their own new title instead, but as far as we know, Awa, Belial, Phoenix, and maybe some others, I don't know, are next in line for Belphegor, Memon, and it's not really sure who Phoenix is going to take over for, respectively. But we'll find out. I guess we'll find out later on in the story. Stay tuned. While they don't come in as large of a region as the old lords, it's still fairly massive. I assume that these lords are fairly busy, but not so fine to their estates and perhaps a bit more frequently seen. I'd also assume that they've actually seen and worked with Lucifer himself as well. So the last category is our outlier, I guess. It's the Eldritch Beings. About half of them are also antagonistic forces too, so that's fun. So like strange space and time entities do, they've slowly been leeching their way into this world for many a millennia. All of their motivations are slightly different, and they're literally from another world, so they work differently. They can manipulate the space around them, and if they use their powers around others unlike them, I'd like to think it would make them sick, disoriented, stuff along those lines, like sort of, not to bring up Slenderman again, but sort of like the Slenderman sickness. Maybe full-blown mental breakdowns and panic attacks. Maybe disassemble you atom by atom. Who knows? It's cosmic radiation at its finest, baby. So now that we've got the characters, what kind of creatures they are, what about where they live? I've mentioned there's 9 rings of hell, but of course only 7 lords, so what about the other 2? Starting at the very bottom, we have the ruins. It's, well, full of ruins. Long ago there was a war that probably took place against more angelic forces, and this ring is the result of that conflict. Apart from being full of dilapidated buildings, it's also full of giant crystals bursting through the ground. They're full of strange magic, and likely mined every so often by the brave souls willing to go out there. It's only populated by animals and some plant life, but it's mostly quiet. Whatever is out there is most likely feral and dangerous, so going out there is not really something you want to do. The next ring doesn't have a name, but it's called the Slums, and it's the ring most predominantly populated by imps. While imps are allowed to live in any other ring, only imps live in this ring. It's also probably the most rundown and worse for wear ring. I'm assuming some damage from previous conflicts pushed its way into this ring as well, And since imps aren't known for some powerful magic, it takes a long time to rebuild. The little guys are trying their best out there. Vastum, or the Wastes, is the next ring, ruled by Belphegor. Despite it being called the Wastes, it's just pretty vast and empty. It's one of the colder rings, if not the coldest. I imagine it's full of fog, occasional snow, and just large chunks of barren land. People usually come in here after initial punishment in Labyrinthium, find out about themselves and what they want to do before moving on. It's mostly known for more cozy homes, a bit of a welcome to hell epicenter, and just general milling about. Labyrinthium, or the Winding Labyrinth, is up next, ruled by Wrath, and as stated, where demons first wake up and serve their punishments before being unleashed onto the rest of hell. I think this ring has perhaps the hottest climate, and that's probably more as you get deeper under the surface into the labyrinth. It's because that there's lots of minerals to be had, lots of lava, and plenty of energy surging throughout the lands. It's a fairly rich environment if you can stand the heat and the maze-like atmosphere of the structures. Next up is the Red Forests, or Silva. This is where Hex and most of her friends actually reside. The land is with the most forest and hence farmland, because of course it is ruled by gluttony. So the forests are of course full of monsters and nasty dangerous stuff, but on the other hand, it's got ample cities, shops, and small towns. Think of like walkable cities and markets and such. Lots of food and abundancy and just like general camaraderie. This is also the ring where Void is spotted, since it's the only one with, I think, the densest forests. The Depths, or Profundus ring, is ruled by Envy. It's beaches and water, nothing too tropical. Less beaches, more cliffs, I would say, actually, and deep water with like little pockets of land. It's got a lot of caves since it's mostly water, so it's pretty desolate, but a lot of people come for, you know, a good fishing, a good little kind of, not staycation, a little getaway. But because there's lots of caves, people come and dive, try to map them out, see if there's air pockets, treasures, etc. But I would say it's few and far between of treasure to people. Paradisa, or Paradise, is the Ring of Lust. It's a paradise. It's a vacation destination for sure. Lots of lush tropical land, beaches, and naked people everywhere, and strip clubs and packed cities. It's hard to leave once you enter, but you probably don't want to stay for too long anyways. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll with the most luxury vacation spots around. I also feel like this, just being in the ring, would give you the good vibes and also make you a little horny, so. The Pillars, or Columna ring, ruled by Greed. Definitely more high-class party stuff, lots of banking as well, court dealings, classy casinos, and cigars. You get the vibe. I think people can be pretty snobby here, but there's also lots of designer stuff, so I think that's kind of why. If you're looking for the best of anything, this is where you go. And last but not least is the Kingdom of Hell, or Regnum ring, ruled by Lucifer. It is the high society and highest guarded realm, of course. Also probably the smallest. Lots of castles, history, high class, good shit. Lots of, I would think, Gothic medieval architecture. Professional dealings, classy events, highest ranking soldiers training, that sort of vibe. Not very many people are permitted to enter it, unless, of course, you live there, but it's like the 1%er ring, basically. And I wanted to mention there is 9 rings based off of Dante's Inferno, but I do like to include the 7 deadly sins, so there's like a mix of both. So I hope you like what I did with the 2 extra rings. I still haven't decided if I want these rings to be like everything exists on a flat plane and everything is a ring, whether like the kingdom of hell, Regnum, is at its very center, and the wastes are the very exterior, the outer ring, and it's the largest, and working your way inward, or if I want them to each be their own sort of continent on a planet. I have not quite decided yet. It's a little loose right now. But with all these places to go, how do you get there? So that's where travel comes in. So not everyone has the luxury of warping at the snap of their fingers, but that's a perfectly fine mode of transportation for some, but there has to be something else available for those who can't. I think most transportation is by some sort of bus or trolley or train or subway. I don't think I really see cars being here. The buses and trolleys go around every day and go through their designated cities and routes, etc. I feel like there's very few cars. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like a car place. It's most of hell, or at least some levels are city-based. I wouldn't think that there's a lot of car traffic and a fair amount of simple foot traffic. I like me a walkable city. Bus driving could easily be someone's worst hell, so I feel like it fits. And I feel like someone's worst hell could be taking the bus. So buses aren't super speedy, but have plenty of routes and stops, and I think that they might be free altogether. I can make it a little utopian and say that there's free public transportation. Why not? As a treat. Subways travel to other cities, I would think. Fewer run times a day, but are large enough to support a large crowd and then some. Also, since it's underground, you get to pass by countless strange spirits and creatures on your way. I also think it would be a little faster because you're taking a direct route where you want to go. You know, there's no stops. There's very few, but you're just like a-going. Trains travel near and far, wicked fast. Of course, once you're inside it, it doesn't feel like you're going fast, but they are a fast. These, once you've checked in your ticket for level travel, you can even take it to another level or ring of hell. Again, if these are rings, then it works well, but if it's just like continent to continent, maybe you're warping? I don't know. Travel by train into other levels of hell is only the maybe legal method of travel. I'm thinking it's kind of a big no-no to just warp onto another level unless with express permission and like a job to do or something. But warping outside of hell entirely, I think is probably a no-go. I think only like pack makers can go to Earth. I think a very designated few can, or like on Halloween, maybe they can just, the veil is so thin that they can just travel around. That part gets a little loosey-goosey, and that's fine by me. I don't want to think about travel too hard. So now that we've got all that set aside, I have a little bit of a miscellaneous section to get through before we go to the story. It's stuff that I feel like is important to include, but doesn't quite have a category, but has enough to talk about. So I think it's fine. We'll just get into it. First is magic. Magic. Most demons with souls have some sort of magic. How much can be based on how old they are, how much they've learned, how naturally talented they are. I guess that would include like your capacity or stamina for magic. However, for those without souls, magic is pretty minimal and considered rare beyond telekinesis and opening simple warp portals, which is like, I want to go to this store. Let me go warp there. There are demons, I think, who have no magic whatsoever, but I think it would also be kind of uncommon to not have any. So take that as you will. Magic can range from simple tasks to elemental magic to summoning other objects or even entities. Pacts can be made between demons and stronger monsters or entities to help enhance their abilities. Rhodey, as I have mentioned before, she's human, but she is also a necromancer, and she has a yet-to-be-named lava nun and are a pretty good example. Magic can be conjured through spell books, enchanted items, and of course, the body as its own conduit. Using magic for sigils can be used to summon others, seal others away, or show ownership through others. Through the use of books that can help one expand their magical capabilities, there is a limit to what one can use and that changes between everyone. That's sort of like exercising a muscle, I would think. There may simply come a point where one cannot physically handle any stronger magic or the amount of magic being produced. This can cause physical or mental harm upon the user, and if one continues to try, it may result in death. You only have so much. Once you use it all, you gotta recharge or it's kaput. While one can push their limits on how powerful a spell can be, there's also a stamina limit to consider as well. Even if the spells are simple and weak, using them back to back to back over and over can wear someone out quickly too. Applies to real life. Also, maybe each individual's magic is personalized too, like the color, the particles, if there is any, or if you can even see the magic itself. Maybe it's a bunch of sparkles. Maybe it looks like the wind tinted a certain color. Maybe it just happens. That's kind of the fun part. I like to keep this magic open if I can, while still being sort of grounded in some capacity. Just because it's fun, but I like personal magic. Like, it might look like lightning, it might look like fire. I don't know. What do you think? One's magic is usually 1 to 2 areas of expertise. It's not typical for one person to be a jack of all trades with magic. What this is like, it's like finding a natural talent. Just try everything until you've got a certain knack for something, and then you can stick with it. I like to think of magic as just being sort of like just flexing a muscle. You've got to work on it, but there's like certain ones that you're going to be better at and certain ones that you really struggle with. Obviously, you can dabble here and there, but there's always going to be the one thing that's the easiest for you to do. And in tying with magic, as we've mentioned before and elsewhere, is sigils, a unique combination of symbols to represent an individual demon, imp, lord, etc. Every single person in hell has one. I'd like to think that there could be some kind of ranking system to show potential power, like a lord, new or old, would have a larger sigil with more rings or something, and an imp would maybe just have something a bit more simple, maybe one circle and a few lines. A sigil could change or just be added onto if an imp was able to become a demon, and maybe once more if they were to gain their soul, I think. The lines and objects contained within should pertain to the individual, perhaps from their living life, their sins, their personality, etc. Shit do be personal and should reflect as such. If we look at Hex's sigil, there's a curved diamond in the center that represents their death. If you don't know that there is a curved diamond, like the 4-pointed star diamond on her throat from where she killed herself, from where she unalived. The inner diamond represents the bond with Beltor's, since he is in the very center. The circle with a line coming off of it represents the key that she always wears, and is her most treasured possession in life and death. The rings and half circles, I think, would be representative of her rank. The star is in essence herself, and the more random squiggles could be her shape-shifting abilities. That's the way I like to think of it. There also is a ziggity-zaggity shape that actually looks like her horns, so it could be as simple as that too. Next and last before the story is fighting, and this is super brief, super not fleshed out, but I wanted to just touch on it. It's very, very vague and gets real gray when it comes to war in a sense, but this is hell. Everybody's probably fighting all the time, with each other, against each other, I don't know. Every demon, I think, probably has a preferred or assigned weapon. The weapon may be even a physical manifestation of their magic, so it's customized to look and to match them. Hex, for example, has many different versatile knives that manifest at will, while Thane has a Viking claymore that's mostly red, to match. And I think a weapon would come with some sort of armor. Another maniacal manifestation, although not everyone has physical armor? It's complicated. Armor is automatically gifted to those deemed powerful enough, magically or physically, to participate in war when/if the time ever arises. Congrats, you just got drafted. Just how a weapon is customized to the user, so is the armor. It's technically an all-over body shield, whether it's visible or not, that just adds some protection and padding when you're getting your ass kicked. The armor can't just be used for typical fights, just the big stuff, like civil wars, angelic fights, etc. That's sort of the trade-off, is you're being gifted a very good set of armor, but you can only use it on certain occasions. But again, it's customizable, so that's always nice. So one's weapon may also be representative of their magic, but also their human lives. Again, as an example, Hex knife plays a part of her human life since it was what she used to commit her crimes, just as Thane's claymore was what he used to get his revenge. Selma's whip is a more symbolic weapon of her life rather than a real physical part of her human life. I think there's also stamina involved with summoning your weapon. The larger the weapon or how frequently it's summoned consumes magic, and that plays into your stamina. And last but not least, the grand finale is the story that we have so far. This is what we have made over the years with certain role plays and etc., where we sort of conglomerated this story, and while it was really loose and tangible at first, it's slowly taken shape. How it will go on and how that will look like is... I don't know. That's kind of the fun part, but we'll get there when we get there, and that's all that matters. So, we start at the very, very, very beginning. It starts with Beltor's making a deal with Lucifer, Lucifer falling, and hell being created. Long, long ago, perhaps before the world was even born, eldritch beings existed and thrived in their pockets of the world. With Earth and the angelic plane in their infancy, Beltor's crept his way and sowed seeds of distrust and insecurity to humans. Beltor's found his way to the angel Lucifer Morningstar, who was starting to have doubts in his father, and struck his first deal. Lucifer, as a consequence of his pact, was cast out and thrown into the underworld, newly formed just for him. Beltor's takes refuge here, and as the newly deceased pour in, hiding away and making deals with humans on Earth every so often. During the creation of this new world, portals popped up on Earth, the underworld, and the celestial that connected them back to the dream realm / eldritch realm, and as such, deities were posted to guard them, which links us back to the Abyss God and their children. As the underworld progresses, the seven deadly sin lords are made, and eventually, after some odd years, newly lords are anointed, and throughout, the characters mentioned before have died as humans and made their way to the underworld with their new lives. Beltor's makes his contract with Hex, and she starts her servitude to him. Slowly but surely, he uses her as a means to make his presence in the underworld more permanent and powerful, since he can only stay for so long. With his intention to become a lord and eventually the new ruler of Hell, Hex is used as a pawn to put her in position to also become a lord and to get her, and therefore himself, closer to Lucifer. At this point, through all of the shenaniganeries, Phoenix starts to catch wind of his plans via Hex's usual trips to the Golden Library. Although this was done earlier by accidentally astral projecting in there. Oops, sorry. She's gathering rare and powerful books for Beltor's, but has no idea what the books contain, only following his orders mindlessly. She has total faith in him, that he's sort of a good guy, even if he's not, and she kind of refuses to see it. Phoenix becomes distrustful of Beltor's and therefore Hex, and thinking that she's fully aware of what's happening, and then one day attacks her in his library, calling her out for treason. She, of course, rightfully flees after getting her ass beat. This starts some distrust within her about Beltor's, and she's starting to not know who to trust. Around this time, Awa has started their pilgrimage and slowly but surely becomes friends with all of the characters mentioned, but also has a wariness for Hex. Well, it's more for Beltor's than anything, since Belphegor probably mentioned Awa about them. Anywho, Awa is now officially with the group. Confetti. Not too long after, during a annual trip to Paradisa, Angus and Hex grow a lot closer, but also, surprise! Beltor decides he's been far too exposed and decides to make himself scarce by severing his pact with Hex and leaving her without any of his powers, but leaving her soul in its place. She's now sort of on her own, and there's a storm brewing with Beltor's, and he is in the center of it all. that's the short and long of it. I don't want to go too much into detail because, oh my god, there's probably a lot you don't need to hear. And this video is probably so long. I'm tired. My voice is shot. Can you tell? But I'm excited to get this going. I'm excited to share the story. I'm excited to hear what you guys think. I love me a little passion project, and this has been my most passionate of projects, and I'm really, really excited to get this all together, put this out there and share it with people and see what they think and see where it kind of goes from there. I don't know. We'll see. I have thoughts, but I'm so excited to hear what you think. If you've got tidbits, if you've got headcanons, if you've got thoughts of stuff you want to add or would like to see added, let me know. Because guess what? I probably will, which is cool. But I hope I haven't talked your ear off too much, okay? I'm gonna go drink some water. I'm gonna go take a little bit of a break. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you take care of yourself like I'm about to do. And I'll see you next time. Enjoy. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Love you. Love you. Bye. Bye. Love you. Love you. Bye. Bye. Love you. Bye. Love you. Bye. 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 Bye.